music real quick. Kill your music. Ah, yo, yo, yo. Do you hear?
Yes.
Oh, there you go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, no need to shout.
Although I hear myself. There we go.
All right. And Pro's in there too?
I see him sitting down right now.
Your signal sounds really good.
I'm a master at this.
Very good. I'm glad you're good at something. All right.
Wow, that's not very nice.
Well, I'm in a very bad mood. I have been. Oh, these got. Did you notice this? Actually, it's like this. They have individual things. They don't. That's fine. I'll just eat them all. Just. Traffic was ungodly all the way.
Well, you were going to Atlanta. I mean,
no, it's worse than normal. I mean, I've been here all different hours of the day, different times, different days of the week. Today was particularly bad.
It's all those Clemson fans trying to go to Atlanta, JK.
I think I passed 2.
I do not have any South Carolina fans here, unfortunately. I did not see it, but I did see the truck. I did see the truck is in front of the stadium. I tweeted a picture of it.
Cool.
Because according to our our esteemed leaders, we are not doing enough on social media. So I made sure that tweeted a picture from the stadium.
No comment right now. All right, go ahead and take us down, Brian. Can you get a check?
What you eat? What you eat? What are you eating over there?
Goodbye. Can you give me one of those little small Pepsis?
Corn's eating?
What that is?
We got 4:15.
Yes.
Okay. I can see, with the way the thing, I can see the second hand on it, so it gives me at least a little guide.
$50 seconds, man. Stand by.
It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Bill Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on a Football Friday. Final Thought Football Friday, your last opportunity to talk with us and talk amongst yourself about the football games coming up this weekend. South Carolina in Nashville to take on Vanderbilt, and Clemson in Atlanta to take on Georgia Tech. Phil Kornblut is in the ATL somehow, some way through the traffic at our broadcast location in Atlanta for the Clemson-Georgia Tech game. Will Pelagic has made the way to Nashville for the Gamecocks and the Vanderbilt Commodores. And, of course, Professor Tom Hayes back in our studios in downtown Columbia. We're going to wrap it up for you and bring it all together for the weekend here on Sports Talk tonight. Plenty of picks coming your way, plenty of ideas, plenty of advice. We'll have some time for your calls here early on as well. 800-956-7266. Email talkback@sportstalksc.com. On Twitter, find us at SportsTalkSC. And don't forget, should you lose us over the airwaves tonight, I know there's high school football and other stuff going on. You lose us over the airwaves, you want to stay with us, you can do so by following our feed on our Periscope on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. And also, of course, we are streamed via the radio.com app and the TuneIn app, our Columbia affiliate, the Point Radio. Always a good place to go for that because they do not preempt us. And once again, Sports Talk will be your only sports talk show in South Carolina with the Gamecocks and the Tigers on the road this weekend. That's why you should make Sports Talk appointed listening and follow us on Saturday. I'll be in Atlanta. Follow on Twitter, Sports Talk SC. Will be in Nashville, and follow him there with the Gamecocks and the Commodores. So that sets everything up. So with that all being said, Will and Pro, I've been running through my head the entire trip to Atlanta, my picks between South Carolina and Clemson. And Clemson-wise, as poor as the Tigers have done in the picking against the spread department, I have a feeling maybe this is the Saturday they put it together and whomp somebody. South Carolina Vanderbilt, I'm really worried about this game from a South Carolina standpoint. This is a better Vanderbilt team than you normally see. I think they showed something with their performance in a loss at Notre Dame. It's only a 2.5-point spread, Will, and Vegas usually has an idea about how these things are going to turn out. Not always right, but much of the time.
I'll go local here first, and then I'll go more to your game. But I honestly think that the Vanderbilt game was more of an indication just after rewatching it last night before I got on the road here to Nashville. I think that's more of an indication of how overrated Notre Dame is as opposed to how good Vanderbilt is. I still think that there are some systemic issues with Vanderbilt. I know that they're trying to replace Ralph Webb, and they're trying to do it kind of in the same way that South Carolina does with its running game. The one other thing that will factor in tomorrow is that there will be some weather. There will be some rain in the forecast in the afternoon. The kick time here, local time, is about 3 o'clock, and the precipitation chance is around 50 to 60%, basically all throughout the afternoon and evening tomorrow. So this could be a grinded-out run-it game, which historically would favor Vanderbilt, though. Again, I don't know if either team's running game right now is stout enough to be able to dominate things. I could see a very low-scoring game, but I do see that the Gamecock defense, which will come in very motivated off of that loss to Georgia, I think they should be able to make this thing a favorable contest. I like the Gamecocks in this one. I still think the matchup still favors them, even though that there is one more year of experience at the quarterback position. As far as Clemson goes, when it comes to the point spread, I don't think any of us necessarily thinks that they're going to lose, but 0-3 against the spread, and I think that's not necessarily an indication of Clemson's skill level. It's something that Chuck Reedy said last night in the coach and the QB segment that really stuck with me. Clemson has really approached this early part of the season like they really don't care what the score is. They can name the score. Their biggest obstacle and their biggest key point that they want to accomplish, Pro, is they want to test out some of this young depth that they have brought in here, these freshmen and untested sophomores that have not gotten any time as far as that goes. And as far as just, winning the game, they want to win the game, obviously. But when it comes to, covering the spread, things of that nature, it's not necessarily the biggest thing on their plate.
I think they want to keep this young team, the young players on the team interested, because they'll have to develop some depth down the stretch, and they know that. And Clemson did it in their championship years. We remember they played some games close to the vest that we thought that they should have blown out teams. But, Dabo was kind of resting his troops till they got to the playoff, and it worked that time. And Dabo sees the same thing with this team. Plus, I think that the addition of some of the young players in the back seven, he's taking a real good look at as well, because I don't think he and Brent Venables have really decided who the best back seven is at this point in time. And, of course, he has the two young studs at the line of scrimmage, a defensive lineman he's got to play too. So he's trying to even though he says I'm not in the business of making people happy, it seems a little bit different as far as shuffling is concerned.
And the one thing, too, that concerns me from Clemson's perspective, Corn, is the news that we got today from various sources that Kendall Joseph will not play for the Tigers. That leaves a big hole in the linebacking core.
Yeah, I hate to lose him going into a game where linebacking play is so important when you're facing the triple option. J.D. Davis stands to move up and be the starter. He's played a good bit, but Joseph has been a mainstay for them. Going back to your game, the thing that concerns me in looking at South Carolina Vanderbilt, you got to allow yourself from time to time to flush the history of Vanderbilt and look at that year's Vanderbilt team on its own merit. Don't hold the history of Vanderbilt football against that particular team. I see an experienced, senior, poised quarterback. I see an outstanding wide receiver, one of the best wide receivers in the SEC. And I see one of the best defenses in the SEC, a defense overall that's ranked 29th in the country, a defense that is ranked 15th in allowing points so far this year. And this is where Vanderbilt has built its program around its defense under Coach Mason. And, South Carolina still offensively has got to show us something. I was watching the second half last night of the Georgia game again. One thing I took away from watching the second half was, besides the fact that Georgia just dominated it with its running game, is number one, the Gamecocks, after opening up the game trying to throw the football, they came out with the mindset of trying to run the football in the second half early on as they were falling further and further behind. But then the thing that really struck me, maybe it was because of Georgia's players on defense, but I thought Rico Dowdle, who got the bulk of the carries early in the second half, I thought he looked slow. To me, he wasn't hitting the hole at high speed or with a lot of speed, something we had seen with him the first couple of years before his injuries. And I'm thinking to myself, where's A.J. Turner in all of this? Here's a guy who is clearly the fastest running back that you have, the guy who was the quickest to get to the hole.
Yes.
And he's nowhere to be seen. I'm wondering if we might see more of him Saturday if they try to force the running game.
We might be. And of course, Corn, I think, not to belabor the point, but South Carolina has to look at its DNA. Even Steve Spurrier, as stubborn as he could be, figured out that, over the history of South Carolina, they really win football games running the football. Even though I like to throw it, I need to get a Lattimore in here, and I need to get some other running backs in here and run the football. That seems to be this team's DNA. And as you can recall, he kind of morphed into a guy who kind of ran clock and ran the football, but he would hit you with the deep ball when he had to. So I think this weather, interestingly enough, will force South Carolina to go back to their historic DNA, and that is to try to develop a running game. And I'm like you, A.J. Turner, everybody talks about his size, and I always say, well, the guy at Stanford is a little bit faster than he is, but they're the same size. I mean, give the guy the football and let him run it. And if the two big studs wants to run in the second half, once you get a lead to run clock, do so.
Well, we've talked
A.J. Turner a shot.
We've talked so much about how opposite their first two games were between Coastal Carolina and Georgia. I think that Vanderbilt is closer to Coastal Carolina than they are to Georgia, at least in my mind. And I think that's why Carolina's going to win.
I think you're being influenced by history there a little bit. We'll be right back. Sports Talk on a Friday night.
I realize past performance doesn't guarantee future performance, but we have Shelton here, yes?
I want to know. God, David.
Tell Corn I have a read.
He said okay.
And he can take it out of the football filibuster.
All right.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Welcome back, Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. We are live from both Nashville and Atlanta. We are brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union. It's all about you at Founders Federal Credit Union. When it comes to your financial needs, Founders always thinks member and takes great pride in offering its members the most innovative products and services. Go to relaxjoinfounders.com to see if you qualify for membership. Not only do we have a lot of college football this weekend, Corn, we at least should have somewhat of a semi-full influx of high school football. We were limited last week because of Hurricane Florence. Still some games not getting underway, but we should have about 3/4 of the regular schedule back on kilter.
Yeah, the schools down in the PD area, of course, still dealing with the aftermath of the flooding. And, we've lost one really big matchup. We were all looking forward in the preseason and talking about it. Abbeville and Hartsville, that game has been postponed. With region play coming up, it's kind of doubtful they'll be able to make it up. Let's welcome in David Shelton of the High School Sports Report and the Charleston Post and Courier with more on that and other things related to high school football around the state of South Carolina tonight. David, good to have you back with us. And I guess, down your way in the Charleston area, Low Country, it's all good. Over towards maybe Myrtle Beach, it's okay. But as you move inward, Conway and the Waccamaw River area, and then into the Florence PD River area, most everything there is pretty much shut down tonight, is it not?
Yeah, that'd be correct. Most everything in the Horry County PD area not playing. I think it's I want to say it's 18 games or so, and they'll just. I've been told most of them will be starting practice on Monday, and they'll just pick up their schedule starting next week. They'll lose a game. They'll lose last week's game, and then they will play this week's game, tonight's game, at the end of the season. Or they could play either one of them, actually. They could play either one. They're non-region games. So you could pick your partner and work it out. But no games in that area of the state. But everywhere else, we're full go, and we got a good night of football ahead of us.
We do. I do want to touch on the Hartsville-Abbeville game because if my memory serves me right, Abbeville beat Hartsville last year, right?
Yeah, they split in the two games they played, and this would have been a great game. I mean, you're talking about two #1 ranked teams. Abbeville has just played unbelievable football through the first 4 games. They were going to go to Kellytown, which was going to be an experience like none other. Very difficult to win there. And it would have been a great game. And I know both coaches really wanted to play, but they won't play now. It won't be made up because, as Jeff Calabrese said, I'm not going to play Abbeville a week before the playoffs.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And one more thing, and then we'll move on to tonight, talking about the various stadiums and football facilities in the PD region and maybe still over in Horry County as well. Are you hearing anything about the conditions of those facilities? Any place really damaged severely by the flooding that's going to cost a school the use of its stadium, maybe?
I haven't heard that it will cost the use of the school, but I saw pictures of like over at Conway. There's a lot of water on Conway's field. It's got to get out. And then obviously, how long it takes to dry out and that kind of stuff. So I haven't heard any reports of, okay, we're not going to be able to use our field the rest of the year. But it is obviously going to be very, very wet.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we've got some games around the state tonight. In fact, really a marquee matchup in the upstate. Let's begin there. Gaffney and Burns. That's going to be a great game tonight. Kind of old-time matchup when these two teams were at the top of their game, and both of them have kind of come back from the depths in recent years, and now they're back on top of their game.
Yeah, I think this is a tremendous test for Burns because I think Gaffney's the best team they've played at this point, and likewise, Gaffney has not played a team as good as Burns. So I think it's a great, other than a measuring stick to see where they are, it is a region game. So they got to, this is a very important game because both of them will have to play Dorman down the road. It'll have a say in the region standings and in that respect. But just from a football standpoint, I think it's going to be an outstanding football game. I like Gaffney to win. I think Gaffney's a better team, but a lot of teams haven't won at Burns over the years. So Nixon Field has its advantages for the Rebels.
Mm-hmm. And what about as we look at games tonight around the state with David Shelton, High School Sports Report? You haven't told me where you're going. I'm going to guess you're going to be at Berkeley, Somerville?
I am at Somerville for the Berkeley game. I am indeed here and looking forward to this matchup. Two top 10 teams. Two teams that Somerville's played one really, really good team and they lost, but other than that, neither team's really played a great team early on. These will be the best teams each have seen, and I look forward to a great football game.
A sneaky good game, David and Skeeza with Hammond and First Baptist both coming in undefeated. Of course, we've talked a lot about Hammond and Jackson Muschamp and obviously what they've done through their first 4 games. Of course, First Baptist moving up after the first 2 Class A AA titles, going up to 3A. How do you see this one playing out?
I think Hammond's just a little bit better all the way around. I think First Baptist with Mikey Dukes is going to find a way to challenge that Hammond defense, but I was telling someone today at that game, there are at least 6 Division I prospects in this game. Now, for a Skeeza game, that's unheard of. But I mean, Hammond's got a couple of 4-star defensive players. They've got Jackson Muschamp. They've got Saul Diaz. First Baptist has Mikey Dukes and Jackson Watson, who's getting some FCS interest. So you're looking at a private school game that will have as much talent on the field as what we're going to see at Berkeley Somerville.
Yeah, I hear a lot of great things about the Birch kid and the Huntley kid as well at Hammond, but the Birch kid who's, his recruiting is kind of off the radar because he doesn't talk. His family will not let him discuss his recruiting at all, so it's kind of off the radar from that standpoint. But people say he's just a phenomenal – I hate to use the Clowney comparison because it's not fair, but, if there has been a defensive end since Clowney to where you could apply it, this might be the guy.
Yeah, I think he's a different style player than Clowney, but he's certainly him and Huntley both are really big, strong guys that can move. Birch can come off the edge again. Not Clowney was 6'6" or 6'5" and kind of lean, whereas Birch is just a big dude. I mean, he's a big guy. So, but you're right. I mean, when you're talking about a 3A Skeeza school with a pair of 4-star defensive linemen, that is almost unheard of.
What else has your eye in the state, David?
I wanted to ask David about a game where 2 programs have gone in opposite directions. Northwestern heads down I-77 to take on Dutch Fork. My question is, what's happened over the last couple of years at Northwestern?
Well, I think they run into a little bit of shortage of talent. They do have a good quarterback. They had the coaching mess last year where they replaced the coach in the middle of the season. This guy is now trying to build his program back. It's going to be a rough night for them, I can tell you that. They've got Jamariel Holly and they've got a good quarterback in Noller, but they ain't ready for what they're about to see at Dutch Fork tonight. That's a really, really good football team. Another game there in the Midlands that a lot of people are paying attention to are Gilbert and River Bluff. Two teams that, a couple of years ago, you wouldn't have said this was going to be a big game, but both these teams are doing very well. And I think it's going to be a good proving point for both teams to see where they really are.
Hey, I'm getting a text message from the bad boy down there, Alan Smothers, and he is telling me that even next week in Horry County, David, they're looking at no high school football down there because they're, of course, with the water moving in from North Carolina, the rivers in South Carolina are going to absorb that. There's going to be more flooding, and apparently the word over there is there may not be any football in Horry County next week.
It very well could be because you're right. The rivers are. I was speaking more to the PD area, the Marion, Marlboro County, Hartsville area. It's almost common knowledge that they may not play in Horry County. The bottom line is they can't play until they can practice. So if they're not on the practice field Monday or Tuesday of next week, they're not going to play a game on Friday. They may be able to play on Saturday or Monday and double up in a week. But I mean, Alan's right. If they're not on the practice field early in the week, they're not going to be playing on Friday.
Yeah, he tells us Conway, West Florence have already rescheduled that game for the last week of the regular season. So I think we're going to see a lot of that stuff happening from that part of the state. But we will have the scoreboards tonight, 10, 10:30, and 11, starring David Shelton, and I'll be along for the ride. And I hope you'll join us for that. Thank you, David. Enjoy your game tonight.
Okay, guys. Take care.
David Shelton, High School Sports Report, Charleston Post and Courier. Back in a moment. We continue on this Friday edition of Sports Talk from Atlanta and from Nashville and Columbia. Phil Kornblut in the ATL, Will Pelagic in the NASH.
BNA. BNA. Let's be real. BNA.
Oh, that's the
the airport? It's the airport.
Oh, I'm thinking more of just the town, not the airport.
Yeah.
I'm more of a driver, not a flyer. And Pro in the COLA or the CAE, if you want to go by the airport.
Airport code, yeah.
So it's good to have everybody together. We're looking forward to another big weekend of college football. We'll talk about the other games in the States this weekend and other games around the SEC and the ACC. But right now, it is the most important time of the week here on Sports Talk as we welcome in our two combatants in the football filibuster. And let's first welcome in Mr. Perfecto, former Governor Jim Hodges, a perfect 5-0 last week, Governor. That's equal to a double eagle in my mind. It's rarely seen these days.
You know, as I told you earlier, I'm just reminding Andre, to beat a man, you got to beat the man.
Yeah. Woo! That's cold. That's cold right there.
You were 3-2. You were 3-2, including an amendment that. Let's see. I believe your switch helped you out. Did it not?
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
It did. I switched back to Alabama after the governor gave a compelling reason to go with him, and I'm glad I did, or I would have gotten really skunked, which I think last week put us back to even again.
You're both 9-6. You also had help from a little youngster, I think. I recall you saying somebody there next to you was telling you to switch back to Alabama.
Hudson sat here. My 8-year-old son told me to switch to Alabama.
Well, you know what? Nothing like the brain of an 8-year-old. Nothing like the brain of an 8-year-old because it's clear of a bunch of nonsense. It's still got plenty of room for free-flowing information. All right, so you're both 9-6. We're all even here as we go into the week. Let me ask you quickly, both of you come through the storms and everything okay? Andre, everything good down your way?
Good. We're going to Myrtle Beach tomorrow to check on the farm and move some animals. I have become a gentleman farmer in my old age, and looks like we'll have a lot of flooding next week.
Yeah, for sure. Governor, how about your neck of the woods?
Yeah, we're doing well, and Rachel's family over in Darlington's fine. I certainly feel for the folks in the northeast part of the state because of all the secondary flooding that they're getting and will get. So we need to be thinking about them.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to this week's games. It gets tougher now because we've got more compelling matchups, and it gets really harder to pick a clear winner here, even playing with the points. So let's get rolling here. And Governor, since you were perfect last week, let's see if you can keep it going. We'll let you lead off tonight. We'll begin on your sheets. I made a mistake with the location of this game, but the point spread was correct. It's Florida at Tennessee, not Tennessee at Florida. Florida at Tennessee, and it is the
Volunteers getting the 5.5, I believe.
Well, it's 4.5. Which one was it's Florida that's
Florida gets the 4.5, I believe. Corn.
It's Tennessee favored by 4.5.
Is that a fact?
Is that what you're telling me?
No, I thought it was Florida getting 4.5, I believe.
See, it is no. Florida is a 4.5-point favorite. So I had the spread right.
Yes.
I just had the location wrong. Florida is the 4.5-point favorite. So let's begin there, Governor Hodges.
Well, if Florida is the favorite over Tennessee, and they're playing at Tennessee, I think it'll be under a field goal. So I'm going to take Tennessee.
Taking Tennessee and the 4.5. Remember, Florida is the favorite. So you're taking Tennessee and the 4.5. Tennessee, the home dog. All right, Governor Hodges, very good. How about you, Andre?
I'm with the governor on this one. I'm going to take Tennessee and the 4.5.
Both of you want the Vols. Okay.
A very, very smart pick from both of you.
Yeah, I don't totally disagree with that either, I think. I'm not, Florida got a win last week over Colorado State, and they're starting to feel a little bit better about themselves, but I'm not convinced yet.
The Jim McElwain Bowl they won in. Congratulations.
Let's go to Texas A&M and Alabama. Andre, Alabama laying 26 here. Both of these teams, of course, Alabama, great last week. Texas A&M showed a lot of muscle against Clemson at home. What do you think, Andre?
Texas A&M could have very easily won that game. The call at the end was real close. I still think they got the call wrong. But in the end, Alabama is just – I mean, they could play a lot of the pro teams. I'm going to take Alabama minus 26.
I think Alabama could beat the Jets, Will. If the Browns could beat the Jets, Alabama could.
Easy. That's not very nice. That's foolish, man. Come on. You
Jets
just salty.
Cost me some major dough last night, the Jets did. Why
I told you not to bet them. I sat there in the bar telling you not to bet them.
I was feeling I was feeling greedy. That's all. I was having a little
I
bit
told
of
my
greed.
father, who was betting in Vegas, to bet the Browns, and he cashed out. Of course, he lost it all on slot machines. Foolish.
Governor, Texas A&M, Alabama. A&M is getting 26. What do you think?
Well, I mean, Cornblue is the kind of guy that would pick the Bills in a game too. So what do you expect? I think I'm gonna take A&M in the points. I think we've gotten a little too bullish on Alabama in conference games. I know they did really well against Mississippi, but they're due for a slight letdown, and A&M is much better than that. So I'm going to take the points.
Yeah, I agree with you. Alabama, Texas A&M's already had a taste of facing the big boys with Clemson, played them a really close game at home. Of course, every time you say that about Alabama, they go out and just kick the mess out of somebody like last week. But maybe those points might be more than Alabama will handle this time. All right, Georgia and Missouri. Interesting matchup here. Two high-powered offenses. Anybody going to have a defense to slow down the other here? We saw what Georgia's defense looked like a couple of weeks ago. Missouri's getting 14 at home, Governor Hodges.
I'm going to take the Dogs until Missouri proves to me that they're the real deal. They've got a great offense and a terrific quarterback, but they can't play defense at all. And I got to think that Georgia's going to take them by more than 2 touchdowns. So I'll take the Dogs to cover.
Andre?
Agreed. I think Georgia is one of the best teams in the country, and they're going to easily walk past Missouri.
No love for the alma mater. That's really terrible. That's awful right there.
Well, when you give up
respect
passing yards to a backup quarterback, I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's a fact. That's a fact.
He'd do well for the Jets. South Carolina at Vanderbilt. Here we go. In Nashville, Vanderbilt, the 2.5-point home dog against a USC team, which to me, USC needs to play this game like it's the SEC championship. Must win for South Carolina to have a better than decent year. If they want to have that great year, potential great year. Andre, what do you think?
I got to go with my Gamecocks.
Taking the Cox and laying the 2.5. All right, Governor?
I'm with Andre. I mean, I think this is going to be really competitive. It may be six points. I don't think it'll be much more than that. But I think the Gamecocks are going to acquit themselves better after what was not a very good performance against Georgia.
Always hard to pick Vanderbilt, even when they're decent, even when they're playing at home. Clemson at Georgia Tech here in Atlanta. We got the spread with Tech getting 15 at home. Clemson has not covered yet this year in 3 games, Governor.
They're going to cover here. I think Georgia Tech is slipping. Everybody used to struggle with the option attack or with the wishbone, but or the option, I guess. But Clemson defended them well in the past, and I think they'll handle them easily.
Mm-hmm. Andre?
I'm going to go with Tech at home. SEC conference game. Clemson's gotten upset several times there at Georgia Tech when they were supposed to win a game there. And with the points, I'm going to take Tech.
Look at Andre. I knew Andre was a guy of my own heart.
Well, I think it's the day the Tigers break loose because Tech's defense is awful. South Florida put 40-something points on it. My God. What do you think Clemson's going to do? Real quick, anybody want to make an amendment here? Governor?
No, sir. I'm going to stick with what I picked.
LG?
I think I'm going to stick with what I got to.
Good luck to the two of you. We thank you as always. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
You too. Thank you now.
Thank you. Governor Hodges, Lieutenant Governor Bauer. We got some professional help with Lee Sterling coming your way in a moment.
Time to put your money where your mouth is. Put up in feelings, let's fight it out. He's a hustler. If you don't got eggs, you won't be getting no sticks. And if you don't got money, you won't see money. If you don't got eggs, you won't be getting no. He's a gambler.
Show them the next item up the bid.
All right, time for our professional help here on Sports Talk. I was just thinking after the drive I had to Atlanta and the unbelievable, ungodly traffic that was Atlanta today. I mean, I know traffic is always bad in Atlanta, Friday afternoons in particular, but today it was particularly spicy. My professional help would come in a bottle. All right.
Makes you think you're the only one who hasn't started.
Yeah, that's true. If I didn't have to do a show, I would have started already in some form or fashion. It is absolutely lunacy out there on the highways around Atlanta. But professional help for your pocketbook when it comes to these games this weekend, we turn to the one and the only Lee Sterling from Paramount Sports. Hello, sir. How are you?
Doing well, getting ready for the, I think they used to call it Battle by the Bay, Miami versus FIU. You remember that famous or infamous fight about a decade ago, right?
Oh, yeah.
Did I do?
Interesting. It'll be an interesting game, too. You know, my daughter cheerleads for the University of Miami, and our best friend, a couple, their son is starting receiver for FIU, Austin Maloney. So they sit two rows in front of us, and we're big Miami fans, so it's going to be a fun game tomorrow for us.
Now, the fight will be in the stands is what you're saying.
No, we don't fight.
A house divided, Lee. A house divided.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, let's tell folks how they can get your good inside information over the weekend for college and the NFL.
Well, all they need to do is go to the website, ParamountSports.com. Had a nice run. We've won all 3 weeks in the football. Last week hit on our 330 to 50 unit plays, and we're now 7-0 on those. So we're going to look to raise that record to 10-0. Some people think, okay, 7-0 is nice. Well, to go 7-0, the odds are an astronomical 99-1. Less than 1% of the people can win 7 straight games. So we're going to try to do the unthinkable and move to 10-0 on those. You want to get involved, just go to the website, ParamountSports.com. Use coupon code SAVE300. You can get 2 weeks of action, just $197.
Super, super. Let's get to the games you have for us today. And first up will be Georgia laying 14 at Missouri. And this is a show-me game for Missouri, if you will. Great offense with a red-hot quarterback. And, you know, is this a game maybe where Georgia has to turn their offense is good. I mean, and they run the ball extremely well. But if Missouri's able to get its offense going in a big way, Lee, and Matty Mock is completing not Matty Mock.
Drew Lock.
Matty Mock, yeah. I can't get Matty Mock out of my mind when it comes to Missouri. Drew Lock.
Trust me, I can't for all the wrong reasons, but there you go.
Yeah. If Drew Lock is lighting it up, I mean, you know, is this where you see Justin Fields come in to try to maybe throw a little something extra into that Georgia offense?
Maybe, but here's the problem I have with Missouri. You know, they and Drew Lock, they beat up on the bad teams, and they usually beat the average teams. But look at Drew Lock. Look it up, and I've watched every game of his. He's never lit it up against a good team. And the Dogs have a good defense. They've held 12 of the last 17 opponents to 14 points or less. And I just think that Georgia's going to have their way with the Missouri defense. Why do I say that? Georgia, watch them. They move around before the snap more than any team. They morph into a 3-4 and a 4-3 and back. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to confuse people because they just don't have the talent. They're not in Alabama or Auburn or LSU that lines up and says, beat us. So that's a problem. I just don't think they have the athletes on defense. Georgia can run the ball on them. Georgia's ran for 803 yards already this year, only giving up 100 yards per game. Jake Fromm barely broken a sweat the last two games, going 20 for 25. I'll take Georgia. I think they stretch the lead out, win and cover 38-20.
Georgia it is. Okay, let's go to the local teams. Let's go with the first game between the two, and that is Clemson and Georgia Tech. You've got Clemson laying 16 here in Atlanta against Tech, a place where over the years, you know, Clemson has had its struggles. Yeah. The Tigers have won 3 straight in the series.
Yeah, because they slow the game down. I mean, they like to have 52 to 56 game plays here per team. And if that happens, you know, you're probably going to see a Clemson, you know, 4, 7, 10-point win. But this Georgia Tech defense gave up 49 points to South Florida. I mean, Clemson's on a clear level above that. And Georgia Tech, you know, I doubt that they can run on this Clemson defense, only 118 yards passing a game. I mean, their passing game is just so unsophisticated. You know, once they get double digits down, it's almost impossible for them to catch up. And last year's Clemson game, 24-10, Clemson wins with just, you know, they held Georgia Tech to 98 yards rushing and 32 passing. So this defense is as good or better than last year. I like Clemson 42-16.
Yeah, I do not disagree with you on that. And let's go now to South Carolina, a 2-point favorite on your sheet here. Gamecocks a 2-point favorite in Nashville against Vanderbilt. Dangerous game. I mean, again, you can't think about Vandy of past. You got to think about Vandy of today. And is this Vandy of today just better than what they've been in recent years?
Yeah, that's important. You know, people either remember what a team did last year, like a Wisconsin, and every year is a new year. I mean, things can change. You can see a team go from a 10-2 to a 6-5 year, and conversely, another team that can have a terrible year the year before, like Michigan State, and they can go 10-2. Vanderbilt, they win this game. I mean, they could be headed with a bowl win for a 10-win season, believe it or not. They've lost 9 straight to South Carolina. The last 2, though, 7 points or less, and there was a couple plays in those games. If they went Vandy's way, they could have won that game. I have a list of 15 things, 15 do's and don'ts and handicapping that sit on my wall, and I look at it every day, every time, every Tuesday and Wednesday when I break down the games and make the decisions on my games. And number 9 is never go against a hot quarterback. And right now, Kyle Shermer is the better quarterback in this time in the season. So I'm going to say Vanderbilt pulls off the shocker here. They knock off South Carolina 27-24.
I swear, I think Lee is like opposite of all of my picks. That's the weirdest thing, Corn.
Well, I mean, who you going to believe, you or him?
It's going to be one or the other. It has to be at the end of the weekend.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, the thing, too, you know, South Carolina secondary, you talked about what Fromm did against South Carolina a couple of weeks ago. I mean, he just picked them apart. Very clean game from him throwing the football. And you're right, Shermer's capable of doing the same thing. Your game of the week, this should be a dandy, Mississippi State and Kentucky.
Yeah, a good game here. Kentucky's looking for revenge. I mean, they got blown out in the game last year, 45-7. We're going to see, can they get a big win or keep it close against Mississippi State, who right now looks invincible. Just call 800-400-9741. And this is what I'm going to do. I've never done this before. There's 3 games in college football. First time I think I've ever decided to play 2 of 3 games on a Friday night. I'm very, very selective, but I like 2 games. I'm going to give your listeners the winner of Mississippi State, Kentucky, and both of the winners tonight in college football. I just feel, and these are games that are on my executive phone service. If I go 2-1 or 3-0 for your listeners, they're going to want to come on board. So first 5 callers, they call right now. We'll give them all 3 games, no strings attached. Just call 800-400-9741 or go to the website. You want to hop on board for all 3 of my big games as we try to run our record to 10-0. It's all available at ParamountSports.com.
You have a great weekend. If you have a great weekend, that means everybody's having a great weekend. We wish you well, and we'll see you next week, sir.
Yeah, take care, guys.
All right, Lee Sterling with his Sterling picks tonight for us here on Sports Talk.
I have no remorse. I am vilified. I will believe in history. History is doomed to repeat itself because that's what the Jets did last night by having terrible history repeat itself by their collapse against the Browns. So that's why I'm doomed. I'm locked into history.
Real reason for concern for the Gamecocks tomorrow. Unless
on.
Vanderbilt is suffering a bit of a letdown hangover from its tough loss at Notre Dame.
If you lose to Vanderbilt, Corey, you're not going to a bowl. All right, these next 2 should be pre-recorded there, B.
Yeah, I got it.
Cool. And they're both self-contained.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network as we're counting you down to kick off tomorrow. Georgia Tech and Clemson, South Carolina and Vanderbilt. It's now time for our opposition research here. Will Pelagic in Nashville. Phil Kornbluth is in Atlanta. Professor Tom Hayes in our network studios. And it's time to get the pulse of what's going on with the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. 1-2 start to the season. The man who covers them for Rivals.com and Jackets Online is Kelly Quinlan. And Kelly, looking at that record, I think people who are outside of the program would have thought that Georgia Tech would have been coming into this game 3-0. What has gone wrong for the Yellow Jackets to start?
It's been sort of an inability to finish or start games consistently. In the USF game, they get 2 kickoffs for touchdowns, which was pretty shocking. And then, finished strong, kind of ran out of time a little bit, but just they were kind of inconsistent. And then at Pitt, they just were flat for basically the whole first half of the game. They dug a huge hole. Paul Johnson made a really terrible decision to fake punt down 7-0 from his own 26. Swings the game to 14. They miss on a touchdown right before the half, and they came back and only allowed a field goal in the second half, but just kind of ran out of time. They had one 99-yard drive that took up a lot of time, and they just haven't played 2 good halves, and they don't play well on the road. They haven't played well on the road for the last year and a half, and it cost them with these back-to-back road games.
And I mean, they'll be playing at home, but as far as just kind of taking that option game on the road, is that a scheme thing? Is that a player thing? Is that something that's a larger?
You can kind of see like how they, you can see the pieces working. There's no real fundamental issues you look at where you're like, oh, they're really struggling, or they're outmanned, or they're underperforming in this area or that area. It's just, different things. They put the ball on the ground a little bit, just some concentration issues and stuff. And it's kind of surprising. I mean, this is basically the same team last year that upset Virginia Tech in Atlanta. And they've played some teams well. USF, I think, is actually a pretty good team. So it's just hard to put a finger on what exactly is going wrong for them on the road.
Of course, the big loss earlier in the season with Kervonte Benson at B-back certainly has a big impact on what Georgia Tech wants to do. How have they handled that absence?
It was interesting. The two guys who were behind him were very close in pushing Kervonte quite a bit. Jordan Mason and Jerry Howard, who played last year, from South Carolina. And those two guys, they ran for almost the exact same amount of yardage that Kervonte Benson did a year ago at Pitt. They put it, I think, 190 on the board or something like that last week, and Kervonte had like 196 against Pitt a year ago. They're both very talented and capable. I don't think there's a huge drop-off. The biggest issue there is kind of blocking and some of the more fundamental stuff. It's not really them running the football. That's not really an issue with those two guys. They're both very talented, and there's not a huge talent gap between those guys.
Yeah, Jerry, of course, Rock Hill native, played at Northwestern High School. They're close to the North Carolina borders. We're talking with Kelly Quinlan, Jackets Online, Rivals.com writer for Georgia Tech. Clemson fans have seen a lot of Taquan Marshall in a Georgia Tech uniform going into his senior season. Kelly, how much does the game need to be on his shoulders tomorrow?
He didn't play well a year ago at Clemson. That was probably his worst game last season. And he's a guy who can run the football. He's dynamic in space. The team has a lot of confidence in him. He's the captain. Doesn't throw the ball particularly well. That's kind of been the bugaboo for him. And the thing that kind of has upset some of the fan base. They don't like his passing, but he does a good job. He leads the team. He's a confident kid. It's very tough. And he's sort of what you want in terms of a leadership kind of aspect of this game. And he plays much better at home. So it'll be really curious to see how he plays against this Clemson team where he struggled and made some mistakes in terms of the option game. Paul Johnson actually benched him up at Clemson a year ago and put Matthew Jordan in the game, and kind of to jumpstart the offense, it actually worked. And then Matthew Jordan got hurt. So it's going to be interesting to see how Taquan responds. There's a lot of pressure on all of them. There's a lot of pressure on Coach Johnson. The fans are starting to grumble. They're not enjoying losing the Pitts and the USFs of the world and losing games where you probably should have won. So it's a very interesting game for them. Their backs are kind of against the wall, but Clemson's really got a huge advantage in terms of talent on the defensive side of the ball, and then really at skill positions as well. So it's a very difficult matchup for Georgia Tech on a lot of different levels.
It seems that Georgia Tech over the last couple of years has kind of seesawed. You know, one year there's an 8, 9, 10 win year, and then the year after that they're under 500. Where is the pulse of this fan base right now with respect to Paul Johnson?
They're a little fed up with the up and down nature. You know, last year they lose every road game they played last year. They were, except for the Clemson game, they were basically either winning or had a chance to win in the final moments of the game and lost. They probably should have played for the Coastal a year ago and instead didn't go to a bowl game. So there's a lot of frustration there. They haven't won a road game since 2016 in Athens. And, you know, that's when things come out. People already have sort of a prejudice against his offense, some fans. And those people are coming out of the woodworks and getting louder and louder. And some of the decision-making in the last 2 games has kind of really turned off a lot of the people that have been pretty ardent Paul Johnson supporters as well. So they kind of need something here. Like, he needs the signature win. He needs a moment like this to kind of turn things around. Now, having said all that, do I think they're going to win the game? No. And so that's where it gets tough. This is a heck of a challenge for them, and I just don't see how they, like, when I look at it from, you know, above and trying to get a whole picture of this thing, I just don't see how they win this game. And so that's where it gets interesting for me. But, you know, I felt like that a few other times and they've won games. So who knows? I mean, they basically would need like what happened in 2014 to happen, where Clemson turns the ball over and gives them some points, and then they can just kind of grind it out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the schedule right now. You have this game. You have Virginia Tech on a Thursday night later on in the month of October. And then, of course, the rivalry game at the end of the year with Georgia. I mean, would you say that he needs to win one of those, or even Miami in November? Does he have to win one of those games to at least get to the fan base, or at least get to the administration that he deserves to keep his job? Or is it maybe more of an accumulation of wins and get back to a bowl?
You know, to me, I think you got to what they call the Big Four, which would be Miami, Virginia Tech, Clemson, and Georgia. I think you need to win one and have good showings at least in 2 of the other games, and possibly have an upset there. Virginia Tech will be hard. That's a Thursday night game in Blacksburg. They're very hard to beat on Thursday night in Blacksburg. And, you know, it's kind of sad. Like, you can see the program's trending better. The recruiting's picked up. They have more talent than they probably had in a long time on the roster, and they're just, the results aren't there in the field, and people are getting fed up. And that's sort of the struggle right now, and kind of my frustration covering them is seeing, you know, that they're getting close to kind of turning a corner here, but he may not be around to see it, or there just may be so much pressure that he doesn't want to deal with it. And so that's sort of, I think, what's going on here. I don't think that the administration necessarily is ready to push Paul Johnson out, but there's just a lot of people. He's not the friendliest guy. He's not Dabo Swinney. He's not going to go and kiss babies and, you know, be friendly to everyone. And Paul is a very kind of introverted person. Like, he doesn't like dealing with people that much. He's just kind of to himself. He likes being around some people he's friendly with, but that's just not his personality, and it doesn't play well. And then he's also not played the media game and been particularly good about handling himself in bad situations. And all of those things kind of create a cumulative effect, along with the offense that some people just don't like.
Kelly Quinlan, who covers the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets for Jackets Online, part of the Rivals.com network. Thanks so much. We'll see you in Atlanta.
All right, thank you.
That's opposition research on Georgia Tech. We'll take a look at the Commodores of Vanderbilt next as Sports Talk continues from Nashville and Atlanta, next on South Carolina Radio Network.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. We continue with our opposition research. Will Pelagic here in Nashville as we get ready for the game against Vanderbilt. South Carolina playing Vanderbilt. Clemson, of course, playing Georgia Tech. We did our Georgia Tech research in the last segment, and now we shift gears to the Commodores. Man who roams the sidelines for Vanderbilt on their radio broadcast. Mitch Light joins us here on South Carolina Radio Network. And Mitch, obviously a lot of people were very, very impressed with the effort against Notre Dame, but as the head coach, Derek Mason, said, they are trying very hard to not obtain any moral victories from this. They still feel disappointed that they did not get the dub in South Bend.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Will. And it's, I've been around the Vanderbilt program for a long time, and there's been a lot of kind of close calls against big-time opponents like that. And this one had kind of a different feel because, despite the rankings and the name Notre Dame on one sideline and Vanderbilt on the other, I think the Vanderbilt guys and coaches thought they were the better team on Saturday and thought that they should have won the game. Definitely not deserved to win the game. When you turn the ball over in the red zone like that, and you fumble at the one and don't capitalize on certain things, you don't deserve to win the game. But I don't think they were surprised it was a close game, and I think they were, I didn't think that it wasn't one of those where all the planets aligned perfectly to give Vanderbilt a chance to win. I think they probably believed if they played them 10 times in South Bend, they'd win 5, 6, 7 times. So I think that was the frustration on just, missing an opportunity for what would have been a breakthrough win for Derek Mason.
Entering the season here for Vanderbilt, you said 2-1 with 2 victories against Middle Tennessee and Nevada, and entering SEC play for Vanderbilt, you kind of wonder where things are. Of course, where they sit in this conference, they're trying to get some upward trajectory with a rising senior quarterback, despite the loss of the running back Ralph Webb. Where do you see Vanderbilt entering SEC play as they sit here coming into Week 4?
Well, quite a bit better than probably most people, even I anticipated. I thought the offense would be good, better than last year. Ralph Webb was a great running back for Vanderbilt, very durable, didn't fumble. But I think with there's definitely more depth, and there might have, Keyshawn Vaughn, the transfer from Illinois, is a big-time player, hasn't, done a ton yet, but I think the running back position group as a whole is better. The offensive line is definitely better. You've seen what Jared Pinkney can do at tight end. He's been a big boost in his junior season. So I think we all thought the offense would be pretty good. The defense has made dramatic improvements so far. They were great early last year until the Alabama game. But so far through 3 games, and they played Nevada and Middle Tennessee. Those are 2 very good offensive Power 5 of a group of 5 teams. And then you go on the road to Notre Dame. So I think the stats at this point in the season that, they're still not, completely representative because people have played different schedules. But, Vanderbilt's averaging 4.38 yards allowed per game, which is tied for 3rd in the SEC. So on paper and on the field, they've been pretty good on defense. And the thing, Will, that they've done so far is they've prevented the big play. They're making teams drive the field against them. So, to specifically answer your question, heading into SEC play, I think this is a very confident Vanderbilt team. And a lot of it starts with Kyle Sherman, the senior quarterback, because he is no doubt the leader of this team.
He certainly is, and I'll get to him in a second. But I did want to at least address the addition of the defensive coordinator and Jason Tarver. Anytime a defensive coach makes a change at that position, it's highly scrutinized. How much have you seen the imprint of Jason Tarver on this defensive unit, or has it just been more an extension of Mason, which he hadn't had over the course of his first 4 years at the helm?
Yeah, it's hard to tell because the defense looks pretty similar because Jason Tarver and Mason are good buddies. They coached together 1 year at Stanford. The interesting thing about that is, Tarver told me, he's like, Mason's been trying to get him there every year. And Tarver was with the Raiders, and he's a California guy, and he just felt this was the right time to make a move. So Mason didn't make the move because the defense, statistically, was so bad last year. He would have made the move 2-3 years earlier. He wasn't going to hand over his defense to someone he wasn't comfortable with. So, he's still very involved in the defense. But Tarver, no doubt, is he calls the plays on the sidelines. No longer Derek Mason calling the plays. There's more depth. They lost a couple guys who are in the NFL. Lost, Oren Burks is a 3rd-round draft pick, and another guy who's a free agent cornerback. But
there's more quality players in the defense this year. I don't know how many all-SEC guys, but I think that they played more guys than at any time I've ever seen Vanderbilt on defense. So I think Tarver, he's very energetic. The players love him. So it's been a positive influence. You just don't know how much of that is the maturation of the defense or, scheme and all that stuff. It's kind of difficult to tell through 3 games.
We're talking to Mitch Lyon, who roams the sidelines for the Vanderbilt Radio Network, joining us here on Sports Talk as you get ready for Vanderbilt and South Carolina Saturday in Nashville, 4 Eastern, 3 Central at Vanderbilt Stadium. You'll see it on the SEC Network. It seems like Kyle Sturmer is a guy who, if you have a cliche about a quarterback, it really applies. Things like coach's son, things like well coached and things of that nature. What distinguishes Kyle Sturmer from the rest of the field?
Smart. He's a smart guy, and that's kind of a cliche too. But talking to Andy Ludwig, Vanderbilt's offensive coordinator, who's been around, you look at his resume: Oregon, Cal, Wisconsin, Utah, San Diego State. He coached David Carr at Fresno, and Andy Ludwig says that Kyle Sturmer is without a doubt the smartest quarterback he's ever been around. So in this day and age, there's not a lot of guys who've been in the same coordinator for 4 years. Kyle Sturmer's been with Andy Ludwig for 4 years. He's kind of grown up with this offense. So he's very smart. He's got the perfect temperament, perfect heartbeat for the position. He doesn't get flustered. This team has started slowly in all 3 games and played much better in the second half. And you could see just watching his body language in the Notre Dame game. They did not complete the comeback, but each drive in the second half was, I think, at least 50 yards or more. So, the offense was calm, and it was because of Kyle Sturmer. And he's very talented, too. He doesn't move around in the pocket much. He's not going to – he probably has, I'm guessing, less than 20 yards rushing in his career, 4 years as a starter. But he's got a nice arm. He can make all the throws. He kind of put it the right way, Will. He is, whatever cliche you want to come up with, the quarterback, he kind of fits into that.
He certainly does. And this is a series that South Carolina has dominated, winning each of the last 9, 16 of the last 18. It's something that is a big talking point here in Columbia. How much of it is brought up, I guess, amongst the players and even amongst the fan bases, as this is certainly part of, a collection of streaks that the Commodores want to break.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that now because, 2 things. Because I looked this up. Just most of the games seem like they're relatively close. And I think 6 of the 9 in this recent stretch were by 10 points or fewer. So most of them have been pretty close. I was just in Jason Tarver's office because I interviewed the offensive defensive coordinators for the pregame show, and he just made a point about everyone keeps talking about this streak. He goes, I don't care. He goes, that first of all, that wasn't here, and that was in the past. He said we spent all week trying to get the players to understand it doesn't matter what happened last year. It doesn't matter what happened last week. The only thing that matters what happened last week is how we can correct and get better this week. So I think at least on the defensive side of the ball, they are really, kind of hammering home it doesn't matter that Vanderbilt's lost 9 straight. That's going to have no impact on the game this Saturday. So, it's easy for the coach to say, but the players, no doubt, especially the older guys, they know they haven't beat South Carolina yet.
And as with your role with the athletic department, you come into a lot of boosters, a lot of people who support the program, and you wonder kind of where their pulse is. Where do you think their pulse is with respect to Derek Mason going in here to year 5? Only 1 bowl trip in the first 4 seasons. Where do you think they sit with Coach Mason?
Well, I think everyone who comes across him will tell you he's one of the nicest guys in the business. And, I've met a lot of coaches that come through and, around the SEC, and I'll agree with that. But, being a nice guy doesn't it helps your job security a little bit, but not enough. So I think this is a big prove-it year. I don't think he was on the proverbial hot seat this year, but if the team really did not show any improvement from last year, then I think next year and the 6 years when you really start to wonder the long-term possibilities there or a lack of possibilities. But, it's still early, but so far it's clear this team is better than last year. A lot of the young players who are playing redshirt freshman, sophomore are among the better players in the team. So despite the fact that Kyle Sturmer is a senior and, there's some seniors in the offensive line, there's not this feeling like it's this year or, that they have to win this year. So I think that the temperature of the fan base is still kind of wait and see, but people probably feeling a little bit better about the program than they did a month ago.
Mitch Lyon, the Vanderbilt sideline reporting on the Vanderbilt Radio Network. Appreciate the time. We look forward to seeing you in Nashville.
Sounds good, Will. Thanks for having me on.
That's our opposition research on Vandy and Georgia Tech. We now go racing with Monty Dutton here on a Friday. Sports Talk.
You good, Will?
Yeah. Why?
I was asking.
All I did was I turned the AC off because it makes a lot of noise. So that background noise you heard was probably the AC.
Okay.
Someone said they thought that they heard one of our phones go into into the crapper and completely cut loose. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I didn't hear that.
I don't think so. You didn't hear that over either of our feeds, did you?
Nope. I'd have told you.
It was from 32 minutes ago, so it would have happened at the top of the hour. Whatever. Jerk faces. I'll bring it back.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Continues from Atlanta as well as Nashville here. South Carolina Radio Network. Will Pelagic in Nashville, Phil Kornblut in Atlanta, and Professor Tom Hayes in our studios in Columbia. A reminder, we will be at Your Pie in Clemson for our next Palmetto Pride Pigskin Preview Tour stop. Brought to you by the fine folks at Palmetto Pride. Litter trashes everyone. We'd like to thank again everybody who was out at our show last night in Newberry as the Wolves get ready for that big game against Carson Newman this weekend. Thanks to Jimmy Coggins, WKDK, and the folks there. Corn, as always, Newberry always comes out and turns out to see us. It was fun being there right across from the Newberry Opera House last night at Bar Figaro.
Oh, we had a blast. Had a blast. Thanks to everybody there who came out, and Bar Figaro and Jimmy Coggins and Randall Stewart from Newberry, and then the coaches from Newberry and the Newberry fans who came out. It was terrific. Looking forward to doing the same. Now, this is great that we get a chance to do this at Clemson. It's Orange Weekend at Clemson next weekend with the Tigers hosting the Orange of Syracuse. If all goes well, that'll be a big football game for the ACC East, because should Clemson take care of its business tomorrow, the Tigers will come in undefeated. And Syracuse, of course, with the win over Florida State, should take care of UConn at home tomorrow. They'll come in undefeated with a quality quarterback and an exciting offense. That should be a very good, exciting weekend at Clemson, and we hope a lot of folks will come out and join us, and we'll have some goodies to give away, and we'll have some interesting people to talk to in person as well. So we are looking forward to being right there in downtown Clemson. We've got stops coming up as well at Wofford and with Furman up in Greenville. In a few weeks, we'll be down in Myrtle Beach for Coastal Carolina later in the year. And, of course, in Columbia, we'll be there with our affiliate in Columbia, the Point Radio, leading up to the USC Clemson game later on in November. So our Palmetto Pride, Palmetto Pigskin in-season tour preview shows starting to grow in interest and excitement as we nurture this particular event around the state, and we appreciate people coming out and being a part of it. Several things to catch up on. First of all, Monty Dutton, unfortunately, at a football game. We're not able to have Monty with us tonight, so we'll miss Monty tonight, but I will tell you they had qualifying at Richmond earlier today. I actually think I drove faster to Atlanta than what they drove at Richmond today. Kevin Harvick is your pole winner, and he wins it with a speed of 121.880 miles an hour. So he'll be on the pole for tomorrow night's race at Richmond, the second race in the chase for the championship, second race in the playoffs. Denny Hamlin, who seems to always run well at Richmond, qualified second, 121.847. Martin Truex Jr. third, Ryan Blaney fourth, and Daniel Suarez is fifth. Okay?
You know why Hamlin runs so well at Richmond there, Corn?
Why is that?
It's his home track.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
A little home pavement advantage, as you will.
The Tour Championship, which is over here outside of Atlanta, and what a weekend it's going to be. Justin Rose and Tiger Woods are tied for the lead at 7 under, 67 and 68 respectively. Rory McIlroy is 2 shots back. Billy Horschel, Patrick Cantlay, John Rahm, and Justin Thomas, they are 4 under. Clemson's Kyle Stanley in the hunt. After a 68, he is 3 under. And, of course, the field of 30, the last 30 left standing in the playoffs, gets a little bit spread out once you get over par. So really, it's looks like you've got in your top 15, the spread is from 7 under to 1 under. So about a 6-stroke difference there. Dustin Johnson, a 70 today, so he is tied for 15th at 1 under par. But with Tiger on top of the leaderboard, with Justin Rose and Rory sitting right there, it's going to be a big television weekend for the PGA Tour. Phil Mickelson had a 72 today. He is at 5 over par. Did you see what they announced yesterday about the changes to the Tour Championship?
Oh, yeah. They're going to get rid of the point system.
And the winner next year is going to make $15 million.
Thank you.
We always knew the point system was kind of cruddy, Corn. I mean, pardon the pun. It was not good.
Blame the point system for golf?
I'm not blaming the point system. I'm just saying it was hard to.
No, explain it. Can you explain it? I can't. I mean, they give you X amount of points for, winning a tournament, and I guess where you finish and all that. But two things I don't understand in sports: the point system in golf for the FedEx Cup and the point system in NASCAR.
I also can't understand why the NFL doesn't go to college overtime, but that's another story.
I would vote for that. Well, they won't do it because they don't want to have one of these 88 to 81 games, Because
no, it's because they want to keep the kickers employed. That's why.
Yeah.
Stupid for the
All right,
kicker.
let's do recruiting while we got time here. I haven't gotten to recruiting yet. Got some recruiting news for you here on Sports Talk on this Friday night. First of all, in football, offensive lineman Darius Washington of Pensacola, Florida, remains firmly committed to Mississippi State despite nonstop efforts of USC and Miami. They both continue to work him daily, as does Mississippi State. USC's been his only official visit thus far, but he'll go to Mississippi State next week and to Miami the following weekend. He took his official to USC for the Georgia weekend, and the Gamecocks have continued to stay in touch with him on a daily basis. USC offered 2020 defensive end Miles Murphy of Greensboro, North Carolina. Some of his other offers are Virginia Tech, Florida, NC State, North Carolina, and Tennessee. USC target cornerback Jamie Robinson of Leesburg, Georgia, will visit Tennessee this weekend. He has taken an official to USC and a couple of unofficials there, as well as Georgia. Defensive end Derek Hunter of Fort Myers, Florida, has a final 5 for officials to Clemson, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, and Virginia. 2020 Clemson target quarterback DJ Ugalilei of Bellflower, California, will visit Oregon this weekend. He plans to visit Clemson again later in the season. Basketball. USC's Frank Martin was at Dorman's practice on Thursday, according to basketball recruiting reporter Trent Markwith. 6'7" Quincy Guerrero of Quebec, who has a USC offer, visits Syracuse this weekend. He's been to Oregon. He's scheduled for Illinois October 5th. 6'1" Alamir Dawes of Newark, New Jersey, has sent an official to Clemson for next weekend, according to D1Circuit.com. He's at Providence this weekend. He'll also visit UConn. 2020 6'6" Terrence Williams of Washington, who has a USC offer, will take an official visit to Virginia this weekend. USC was in to see him last week. He has not decided if he'll visit USC. And in baseball, 2021 right-hander Billy Barlow of North Myrtle Beach committed to Clemson. He's the Tigers' second commitment for the class. All right, we need to get to our picks from our Sports Talk Pick'em Challenge panel and update everybody on what's happening there, because I know that's important to the day-to-day life in South Carolina. So, look who went 4-1 last week. Thank you very much. The Corn, the defending champion, goes 4-1 along with the money coach, Fran Halloran. So we sit atop the pile at 10-5.
Blind squirrel. Blind squirrel.
9-6. Pro Will, Matt the Newsman, the bad boy Alan Smothers, and Brian Leonard, our illustrious producer, all 9-6. And pulling up the rear, we have the big kahuna, Bobby Harton, 8-7, and Kevin Cohen at 7-8. Maybe the new year for him, for Kevin Cohen, maybe the Jewish New Year will ring in something better. As for this week's games, here we go. Florida, Tennessee. Tennessee getting 4.5. And it looks like kind of a split panel. I'm taking Tennessee. Pro's taking Florida. Will's taking Tennessee.
Anti-Florida.
Yeah, I don't like Florida. I'm taking Tennessee points at home. Texas A&M and Alabama. Looks like I am the – nope. Kev Cohen is taking A&M. I'm taking A&M. Everybody else is taking Alabama.
Not falling for that stuff anymore.
Yeah, I swore I wouldn't do that, but I just can't overlook 26 points. Georgia, Missouri. I'm taking Missouri in the points. So is Will.
Look at you.
Georgia. USC at Vanderbilt. Okay. I'm taking the Cox. I'm laying the 2.5. I don't like it, but I'm doing it.
Just hold your nose and do it, man.
And Will's doing it. Clemson, Georgia Tech. I'm taking the Tigers. Are going to cover finally. Pro says yes. Will says no.
I've been burned 3 times. I'm not doing it a 4th time.
Most everybody else is taking Clemson in that situation. Back in a moment.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Winding things up here on a Friday night edition of Sports Talk. It's been a phenomenal show. Thanks to everybody who has participated tonight. Will Pelagic's in Nashville. I am here in Atlanta, and the professor is back at our studios with Brian Leonard. A reminder to make sure, as part of your enjoyment of the football games tomorrow, you follow me here on SportsTalkSC.com as I cover Clemson, Georgia Tech. Follow Will Pelagic in Nashville as he covers USC and Vanderbilt, also at SportsTalkSC.com. We'll be adding information and insight and opinion during the games, and, of course, our post-game coverage with interviews from the locker rooms and our periscopes from the stadium. So be sure to check us out tomorrow, along with everything else you're doing related to college football. Now, can't think of a better way to wrap it up by talking some golf. We welcome in from the fairways and roughs of our state. I was going to say
hopefully not the roughs.
Well, eventually you're going to roll the ball into the rough. You're not going to hit the short grass every time, are you, George Bryan III?
No, I tell you what I like best about the rough is you can hit it much farther. You get what we call flyer live, and it makes me feel like my club head speed's greater. You know, I like to get that heater.
Why does my ball in the rough always land on a root?
Well, I mean, Phil, come on now. I didn't even know with your imagination that affected you. When I played with you, Phil, it's always straight down the middle. If you've hit it in the rough, I just don't remember it.
I'm a big fan of the hand wedge, personally.
Yeah, the hand and the foot wedge. I tell you what, feels pretty magical out there.
Hey, George, what did you think of the announcement of by the PGA about what they're doing with the FedEx Tour Championship, especially the $15 million payday at the end of the day?
You know, probably what I like best, if you look at the schedule, it ends in August, like August 25th, 30th, 25th, or 28th, or whatever. The money, I think that gets everybody's attention, but I think the schedule piece probably gets mine. And I do think I love the season. I love the idea. I'd be curious to see how others feel about it, and then most importantly, how the players react. I think they like it.
Well, you think, George, I mean, you don't want to go up against football. That's the thing. I mean, when you have a tournament that goes up against football season, it kind of gets lost in the shuffle, with the exception of this Tour Championship with this loaded field. I mean, I think that it behooves golf to kind of, I don't want to say get out of the way, but at least try to mark the most exposure.
Hey, it's a year-round sport, but you can't 12 months out of the year. You can't get excited about just any sport. So I do think that's the better direction. So if you take a look at the major championships now, they'll be played within, I don't know about the exact number of weeks, but within 3 months, which is fabulous. And I know the players I think we're going to see more players play better. Just tightens up the season, and I personally, I'm in favor of it. So.
Well, the TV execs and the fans are going to love this weekend. You've got Justin Rose, Tiger Woods at 7, Rory McIlroy is 2 back, and who knows? You could see Ricky Fowler make a move. Certainly, Dustin Johnson is within shouting distance, and here's Kyle Stanley hanging in there at 3 under par.
That's Tiger just moves the dial. It's both it's stunning to me how wherever he is, you can hear the people move in his direction. So I'm always I'm pulling for golf, and he seems to be the best toe at this point. I have to say, I'm going to move this conversation, and because it's the weekend, I mean, those guys, the real game starts tomorrow late in the afternoon, and then Sunday it gets exciting. Lucas Glover's on top of the leaderboard in the web.com Tour Finals, and most keep up with golf, but there's a real important Sunday coming up, and Lucas is leading that event down in Jacksonville to get his tour card, and it's hard to believe that he's a player that good would have to go back through the qualifying. But unlike contracts and all the other professional sports, you got to prove yourself every single tournament and every single year in golf. So he's atop the leaderboard, I think, at 14 under.
What's Wesley up to, George?
He's resting and working on his golf game. He got a little bit loose, got fundamentals got a little bit off in this past calendar year, but he looks great to me. We played week before last, and so he looks pretty good. But rest and a lot of work on his fundamentals, and they get started back in a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
Ryder Cup coming up in Paris. Now that's something to look forward to. I'm real curious how what happens in Paris.
We going over there for that, George?
You and I will take our imagination. Our imaginations will be present.
Hey, what's happening in the local scene in terms of colleges and juniors? Anything jump out at you this week?
I'm so glad you asked. I was first of all, Lauren Stevenson. She's playing her senior year. She's one of the world's top 3 or 4 ranked golfers, and she's at Alabama. She's from Lexington. Started off at Clemson, but transferred to Alabama. Made it to the semifinals this year. I was talking to her dad, and she's going to go to she's exempt into the finals of LPGA Tour qualifying. So she will remain an amateur through that event. And then I saw Caitlin Danball. She's an ex-USC Gamecock, and she will be heading to the LPGA finals in just a couple of weeks. And I was noticing on the Division II men's ranking, South Carolina, the state of South Carolina has 4 teams ranked, or 4 or 5 in the top 20, which is a bit unusual for D2. But USC Aiken, Limestone College, USC Aiken, I think something like 5 and 7 or 6 and 8. It depends on which ranking you're looking at. Newberry's 10, and then Lander College sneaks in at 18, and that's pretty goddamn special in my opinion. And we keep up with Division I. That's easy or easier, but congratulations to these teams. We got some great golf here in the state.
Absolutely. Real quick before we let you go, about 30 seconds from the floods. I imagine the beautiful course at Sherrill State Park probably got a lot of water, maybe damage. You heard anything about that or any other courses that were severely hurt?
You know, at this point, I have not, and that'll be my assignment for next week. How about that?
That's a good
Which I
assignment. Report back to us.
There you go. And, man, I tell you, technology is amazing, but it doesn't hold a candle to that imagination of yours. So, y'all, until next week, tee them high, but shoot them low.
You got it, my man. And stay out of the rough and off the roots, if at all possible. All right, George Bryan III with us here on Sports Talk. Pro, you've been sitting silent for a while. Final thoughts. Oh, by the way, let me go back to our panel pick'ems and note that everybody picked South Carolina to lay the points.
Very nice.
Against Vandy. I don't feel good about it. I'm just going to do it because I can't pick South Carolina to lose to Vanderbilt. That's just about as low as you can get. Though I stand by what I said. You can't base Vanderbilt on its history. You got to look at this year's team, which on paper can do some pretty good things, Pro.
Well, it can do some pretty good things if their offense is on the field. That's why South Carolina has to go back to its DNA historically. That's running the football. And if you want to shake up Shermer, you don't have to actually hit him, but get him off his spot. I can see some exotic blitzes called up in this football game to get him off his spot, so you have to reset spot where guys are. And that's the time you can buy in order to get maybe some turnovers out of him.
I'm picking against Vandy because I guess if you go down Broadway in Nashville, you couldn't find 2 in 10 people who know that Vanderbilt's even home this weekend. So there.
But there are a few Gamecocks you'll find staggering around.
Of course. I'm talking about people who live here.
I think the visitors, yours and here, are going to have a lot of their own fans supporting their teams. All right, that'll do it. Don't forget the high school scoreboards tonight. Follow us tomorrow from the stadiums, and have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.
Are we good? Do you need anything from me, or I'm going to sign off?
Well, let me ask Corn. No, we're good. We'll go home.
Bye.
All right, bye.